City of Wausau Water Works Commission meeting, council chambers. It is 11:03, Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025, and we do have a quorum present and potentially a couple late shows. First item up would be the approval of the minutes for August 5th. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Motion from Gelhar, second from Hadley. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Any changes? I should have asked that first. All right, up next, that is approved. Director's report on utility operations, and we have 3 or 4 items here our director would like to talk about. Mr. Lindman.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. We had, editorial that came out in the Wausau pilot about the sewer penta study we did back in 19 and 20. That study is attached. We did do some work on a sanitary sewer that was taking in inflow and infiltration, essentially groundwater, through some of the joints in the pipe. We did some chemical grouting on those. We retested that downstream manhole, and that came back non-detect. There was some information in that article about the detection levels. The limit of detection was different on the different tests. Well, the lab determines what that is. Ben reached out to the lab, and the lab provided an explanation on that, right? So it depends on what the sample looks like, and they make the determination on what they're going to use, what equipment, and then what level of detection they're going to have. So happy to answer any questions on that, or this is actually part of the Walico property that's on Thomas Street. They're responsible for the cleanup of the groundwater there. So they're actually drawing groundwater out. They put it through their own treatment system, and then the cleaned up water, the penta that's removed, they house it and then get rid of it, and then the treated water then is discharged to our sanitary system. Yep. And Ben, do we have penta as part of our discharge permit at the wastewater plant? We do? Monthly, yes. Yep.
But you're satisfied?
We are, yes. Yep. 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 Wastewater update on some projects. The Washington Street siphon replacement. I think that lift station is online. I think there's just some punch list items, right, Ben, left on that? Yep. There will be some work going on that site on Washington Street for a while because that retaining wall will get reconstructed. So that will be starting here shortly if it hasn't already. The headwork screening project and the Cherry Street lift station, both projects that will continue on through this fall and into next year as well. The Peter, Deb, both of you came to the tours of the drinking water and the wastewater facilities, so I think those were good days. If you have any questions on those after you had a chance to absorb, but appreciated you coming. So take a look.
Hey, tours are, we can do more tours. Line them up. Thank you.
Good. Yeah.
All right, anything else for the director? All right, up next is item 3, discussion and update on solar array project. And we have today with us Mary Clues from our Sustainability and Energy Committee to give us a little input.
Thank you for welcoming me here today. Just to make it clear, I am no longer on the Sustainability Committee, but I am here representing them because they're busy people too. And I was on the committee when the materials in your packet were forwarded by the committee to this committee. So I was involved with that along the way. Just some things that I wanted to point out. One was, of course, the date on the materials. I can't answer for, there was a note about the IRA funds, and I'm not sure how that shakes out with all the things going on in Washington. So just to still encourage you to look at the financials, because everything I've been seeing has been that electricity prices are going to be much higher than was very conservatively estimated for the financials in this project. So to please have a really hard look at that. I mean, it went, obviously, though, overall, the goals of this project very much align with the goals that the city has put out. The City Council passed a greenhouse gas reduction resolution, moving us toward more energy independence, because especially the last few days, we have a lot of sunshine in our state, but we have no fossil fuels. So whatever we can do to make ourselves a little more energy independent in our state would be awesome. Also, just the idea that we are bolstering our community to meet future challenges. This really is a forward-facing project. These renewables are the energy of the future. Many countries are getting ahead of our country in this regard. And we also, there's estimated that strains may be coming to our infrastructure because of changes in the weather, more extreme cases of weather that are we're seeing all over our country. What that will do to how people move here? We may have more energy demand because not only might more people be moving here, but things like data centers are really starting to pull on and compete for the energy that everyone uses. And some of the estimates I've seen for future rises in energy prices, the New York Times quoted a June analysis from Carnegie Mellon University, North Carolina State, found that energy prices are on track to rise at least 8% nationwide by 2030, and as much as 25% in places. We don't know where we're at in those spaces. And even over the last year, more than a year, from May 2024 to May 2025, some places like Maine, prices rose 36% on their energy. We're not immune to these things and the kind of pulls that we're going to have on our energy system. I also just wanted to stress that there's resident support for this project, just to try to gauge what kind of support there was out in the community and what the community thought about it. The committee took a petition around, and other people did as well, and I think the number was like 179 signatures were gathered, and I hope that the committee is aware of that many people are willing to say, boy, this is something our city really should be doing. So just to wrap up, that it's in line with city goals. It makes financial sense on several levels. It adds to community stability because it can also gain some control for the costs that are coming to our consumers, and there's citizen support for this. We really urge you to support the solar array.
Thank you, Mary. 6 years on the committee. Any questions for Mary, or we also have Carrie Edmondson here?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the commission. I'm not going to add a lot. I just want to note that the Sustainability Committee is overwhelmingly supportive of the project. They did do a support letter that was approved unanimously, and then they also had attached the petition for your review. So they've been looking at different options, grants, funding, different options out there, and they just wanted to, formally kind of recommend approval.
Thank you. And is there an action? So this did go to the CIP this year, correct?
It did, yes. It will be going to the Finance Committee for consideration, and the proposed funding on this will actually be out of general obligation with the city and not the utility. Mary Ann might have some clarification.
Just to clarify, what was funded in the 2026 through CIP's recommendation to date is just the engineering, not
Yes,
the project
correct.
itself.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, thanks, Mary Ann.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did have this,
that was
I did have this as design.
150,000.
150,000 for design and then construction in 2027. You'll see in my memo, though, what the information that we did try to highlight that has come to light recently is how the tax credits are going to fade away, from what they were before. So what actually goes to the Finance Committee might actually have to change once they start discussion. So if they want the project to go and still earn the tax credits, they will probably, they will have to fund construction for next year, design and construction, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone have anything else for that? And then we'll bring Mary Ann up, Finance Director Grote for item number 4. So watch for the solar array project as it goes through finance for approval on engineering. That would be, is that the next Finance Committee, Mary Ann, or?
No, well, it will go through the
Part
budget
of the budget
process, the
process.
solar,
Mm,
yeah.
got it.
And of course, if it's funded by the city, then it's funded by the taxpayers, and it would be borrowed money. So regardless of who funds it, somebody has to pay for it, and it's probably either going to be borrowed money or water utility would also have the opportunity perhaps to consider PFAS settlement for that funding source too.
Okay, thank you. So up next then is item 4. It's under number 4 in your packet, that tab with the financial pages, and Finance Director Grote.
Yeah, so both the water and sewer utility, these are the July 31st reports. During the year, we issue what we modified accrual accounting, which is a little different than full accrual like you would see at a business, because obviously we're concerned about our cash position at all times, and the modified accrual is really looking at showing things that are drawing on cash on the income statement. So, in the private sector, you would see if you were purchasing an asset that would be on the balance sheet, and you wouldn't be able to see really how it impacted the cash immediately. Same with debt. So July brings us to about 58% of the year which one is first in your packet? Is it
You're
water?
showing water first.
Water first, okay. So both water and sewer, the revenues are lagging a little bit compared to July 31st. That, at this point could be a couple of things. First, when we were producing the budget, the water rates were, just going into effect, and it had been a half year, so we were working on some estimates. The other thing is oftentimes summer is a heavier water use because of watering. Obviously, with the July 31st, we're on a lag because we're doing quarterly billing, so we might not see some of that uptick. It has been a wetter and cooler summer, so we may not see that same increase. And with the increase in rates, people might be using conservation efforts to control their water bills. The other thing is, because of that delay, there's always some unearned revenue, or unbilled, revenue that wouldn't be reflected in the revenues here. So nothing to be too concerned about at this time because of those other issues. When we look at the expenses, there's not too many outliers as far as that, even spending throughout the year. In the water, the professional services were a little bit higher. And I know that the utility authorized the leak detection through, I don't know, through space. I don't know.
Satellite image.
And that may not have been anticipated in the budget. The the other contractual services is about 150% of budget. That was a big water main break. I can't think of the street right now. Highland Boulevard?
80th and Highland out in.
Yeah. And so that was outsourced. Insurance, this is, the casualty property type of insurance, and general liability is coming in higher than the estimate. We did receive an appraisal this year. The appraisal just came in. It was hard with particularly the sewer utility because, some of the buildings, obviously, a lot of money was invested in that rehab of our sewer plant. Some of it, the buildings, came down partially all. I don't actually know the details of it, but it made it really hard to come up with the insurance estimate because we had existing facilities there. So we did have actually a citywide appraisal on all of our properties to ensure that our insurance. So we have that, and it will help us do a better job of budgeting for 2026. And then when we look at the principal and interest, the city makes payments twice a year on our bonds. In May is the principal payment, so that's the only principal payment we make May 1st. And then for interest, it's May and November 1st. So that's why we're showing 100% principal disbursement, and then interest, the second payment will be made in November. And you would think we would be right on budget, but because some of these loans are through the Department of Administration, they're updating our amortization schedule with each draw. And so, we had to pick a date, and we estimated at that point, and then if there was a subsequent draw, it changed that principal payment. So that's why we're a little bit off there. So right now, kind of showing a decline in revenue of 584, but that includes projects totaling $1.4 million of capital outlay. So you would expect that there would be a cash draw in that situation. And there could be timing differences because typically on these projects, we're paying the bill first for these state projects and then getting the reimbursement later. So there's a cash delay there because the revenues would show up in the proceeds from long-term debt. Any questions on the water? Okay. And then the sewer, as I said, the same thing with revenues running a little bit light. There we had not as much of a question on the budget because we had full year of rates to use. But again, looking at the delay in the billing and then not receiving that water usage for summer sprinkling. When we look at the utility expenses, you can see that the salaries are a little bit high, not too significant. Special services are at 89% of budget. There again, we had signed a contract late in the year for IT pipes, which may not have been included when we were doing our budgeting. Insurance, same thing that I had mentioned earlier, as with the principal and interest payments, those are made on the same basis. And then capital outlay, just outlining the expenses so far. And then one other point for both the water and the sewer, you'll see capital contributions. Those are revenues that the utility recognizes the expense for a capital outlay, but then recognizes a revenue when the city finances a project on the utility's behalf, or there is a grant on the utility's behalf. So capital contributions for both of the entities would represent if a project is being funded by ARPA, that's the COVID money that the city got, if it's funded by principal forgiveness from the DOA, or if it's funded by a tax increment district. So examples of projects being funded by the tax increment district would be the mall, utility work, and Fulton Street, first. And then ARPA would include the SCADA equipment, let's see, water meters. I think that's all for water. And then on the sewer side for ARPA would be, let's see. In addition, the TID is paying the Washington Street siphon. And what else do we have for ARPA? Cherry Street lift station. And then also in capital contributions would be if they received a special assessment from a homeowner or a property owner. Those are usually relatively tiny, less than 10 grand a year, something like that.
The Headworks project would be one of these.
What's that?
The Headworks project.
The screening project,
Yeah.
that's being funded through a combination of loan and principal forgiveness.
Yep, yep.
Questions for Mary Ann?
Okay. Thank you.
You like the format? All right. Thank you. All right, up next is item 5. It's a discussion and possible action approving wage recommendations. So under tab 5, you see a memo from Mr. Lindman, and we have some charts on what our recommendations are and a little bit of Ellers. I'm not sure. Let's do this first. I would entertain a motion to approve the wage recommendations under item 5. Okay, so we have a motion from Gelhar, second from Hadley. Did I see that right? Okay. All right. We do have our HR director here if we have particular questions on that. Eric, did you want to give an overview?
Yeah, so, a few years ago, we've been talking about this. These numbers are updated with today's costs and within the pay structure that we have here developed within the city. And this does not put us at a lead, within in the utility community. Like, we're not going to lead, but this will definitely make us competitive, which will go a long ways with our recruitment and retention moving forward, which has been a struggle for us for the last few years, and this will make a big difference for us as we do that. Not only will it do that, but it will also improve the culture, having fully staffed within the utility, being able to train people up from the ground up, having that long-term knowledge, and less turnover, as well as our on-call. We won't be having so much, when we're short people, then the on-call has to be a shorter rotation, right? So, and then Ellers had provided us some information on the review of the reflections in the budget. We did send an invite to Brian, but he hasn't joined us at this point, so. It hasn't changed our cash flow projections at all. When we look at the likelihood of looking at rates in the future and when those will be. And so, and again, this is a fairly small impact to our overall annual budget.
So we do have Director Grote still in the room. If maybe you'd like to swing up and help us understand the other side of it.
I was just, I guess, going to ask the question and maybe express concern. As I've listened to this, understanding that the technical positions are unique to other positions within the city and are competing with unique abilities in trying to attract people from similar positions. I was surprised that the clerical administrative positions were included in that because I would consider those to be generic positions throughout city. I mean, the administrative assistant 3 position, the administrative assistant 2 position are found, in almost every department in the city. And I was surprised that they would be included in the study because they're not unique. And I was concerned about internal equity within the city overall because, obviously these are city employees, and to treat them differently doesn't seem like it would make others, again, the internal equity concern.
Thank you.
Related to the administrative assistant position?
Yes. There's 2 of them, a 2 and a 3.
On this chart, if I'm
Mike, oh yeah. Mr. Forrest.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I apologize for being late today. It's one of those mornings. The wage column, I assume that's an hourly rate. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And we probably have background information on this that I'm forgetting or ignoring. How did we arrive at these increases? I'm not questioning the increases. I'm supportive of increasing, but just questioning how, the $7.69 per hour increase for the superintendent, and where does that come from? What's the basis for that?
So these are actually the basis of our pay structure within the city, right? So the pay grades are being reclassified. And how we came up with those was comparison to other utilities that have, similar complexities that we have. And it's also based on AWWA comp surveys, which I think spans 3 different years of comp surveys.
Okay, so
that
in the
also-
case of the water operations super, was pay grade 12, now pay grade 9. So you changed the pay grades.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
So to Director Grote's point, so we have are we reclassifying the admin 2 and 3?
I guess that would be one question. I think, yes, I think that those duties and responsibilities, as I outlined in my memo, have increased. I mean, we have an admin 3 right now that's actually running some utility programs down, like our cross-connection control program, and she's doing other things. And I think that the duties, since both of these admins were hired, have increased. And so actually the current admin 3, I would say that job description needs to be rewritten and actually probably needs to be, a different position. I know we have an open utility resource manager position. It may be more in line with that. But I think it's just really the responsibilities and the duties since the admins were hired down at the utility.
So then, to the director's point again, it's not necessarily then an admin position. So maybe that needs to be looked at. I see the HR director here. Ms. Nowak, if you could shed some light on that.
Sure, thank you. Director Eric did bring me a job description for an analyst proposal for the job duty. So I've been running an analysis on the level 2, which is going to be reslotted to a level 3, and the level 3, which is going to be reslotted to an analyst. And that's because I think to Director Grote's point, it's always been just kind of a general catch-all term, like, hey, this is a secretary, which is actually a term I've removed from some of the job descriptions that I've seen, because what was maybe once a secretarial answering the phone position has now morphed into analyzing data and, in some instances, filing federal reports and responsible for the data that's enclosed in those reports. And that to me is not a secretary's duty or even an administrative duty. When you look at the level of responsibility of the position, I think we have to take that into consideration with semantics, but also understanding that there's a lot of old antiquated terms that have been put to positions. So in doing an actual job evaluation, which is what needs to be done across the city, we will probably be adjusting a lot of these admin positions and clarifying what it is they actually do versus what is it that they did 10 years ago, the last time this term was made. So that's.
So are we premature in including this with this wholesale change when we?
I mean, we could bring those back, once.
I would, because I'm still working on
Right.
the analysis.
Yeah.
I'm a couple weeks behind on my work, so.
So those could be brought separate once that analysis is done. Yep.
Okay, so I guess we would have an emotion to amend then to accept this wage reorg with the exception of the admin highlighted in red.
Okay.
Yeah, once the analysis is back, yes.
Okay, Mr. Gelhar.
Yeah, I'd move for that amendment.
All right, so we have a motion to amend. We'll take 2 votes just to be correct here. And a second from Hadley. So the chart we see with the 2 admins in red, those 2 admins in red will be brought back separately. All those in favor of accepting that amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I
Any
have more
opposed?
discussion, Mayor.
Question from Mr. Force.
Yes, 2 questions. Eric, what is an overall percentage increase? Is that in the chart and I'm just missing it?
The impact is about 1% of our budget.
But the salary range from last year to this proposed year would be what, 10%, 5%?
I
How much are we increasing salaries across the board?
I didn't,
I could add this up and compute it
Right.
myself, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other question would be to our 2 supervisors, whether they're comfortable with this, whether they feel it's going to help them compete for positions and retain operators in their positions.
I think it's going to help, Jim. I don't think it's, like Eric said, it's going to put us on the forefront. It's not going to put us on top of anything yet. But I am hopeful that we do have a citywide reclass. I mean, the county's been working on their second reclass since the city did their last one. So hopefully everything comes in line that way. Anything we can do here today would help. I think this would help with morale. I think it would help with retention. I have an offer for a candidate I want to make, but I'm waiting to see how this comes out first. It's a very qualified candidate. I'm not sure if we can attract him with what we have on the table right now. So I think it would help. It's a start, and it's going to have to be an ongoing reevaluation with this. We're going to have to stay current if we want to maintain our people.
Ben?
I share the same sentiments basically as Scott. Anything we can do to retain our current employees will help, especially the supervisors. I feel that they are underpaid, greatly underpaid for what they do, so I think this will definitely help with that.
Thank you.
Boost some morale as well.
Mr. Gahar.
I would move to approve the recommended wage increases minus the administrative assistants.
Okay, so we had a motion, and we had a motion to amend, which we passed, so we are now at the main motion, which is as amended without the administrative assistance. Any further questions on that? Ms. Hadley?
This was mid-range, right? This new salary,
The-
you're going to start at the bottom, you're going mid-range.
We,
Is that the strategy?
what we're doing actually, if they're like if they're at a step 10, then their new pay grade, they will stay at the step 10 in the new pay grade. So if they're so the pay grades have, I don't know, up to 12 different steps or 15 different steps. And so if they're in a step of 10, then they will stay in step 10, but in the new pay grade. Okay.
Change the pay grade. So the steps, generally you increase one step per year.
Correct.
Okay. All right, motion and a second as amended. All those in favor of accepting the new pay grade recommendation signify by saying aye. Any opposed? And that passes.
Thank you.
All right, up next is item 6, discussion and possible action approving the sole source purchase of magnesium hydroxide chemical by Midwest Chemical and Equipment. Entertain a motion. That's Ben's. You want to tee that up? So why this is a sole source recommendation?
It would just be my recommendation to stay with Midwest Chemical for the purchase of the magnesium hydroxide. It's a chemical used to increase the alkalinity, makes the wastewater more stable, more treatable, if you will, with phosphorus chemicals in that. So as you can see, they're holding their pricing firm. After the first year, it'll raise a penny per pound more. So that's for the chemical that they offer, which is water soluble. With our current piping setup at the plant, we've had some clogging issues. We have to do some piping modifications in that and do daily flushes. If we were to switch over to a different chemical at this time, it would create gelling issues, and we'd create a lot of extra work for the guys. We'd have to do piping modifications again.
So this is a unique
It
formulation.
is.
Okay. Would entertain a motion to sole source the magnesium hydroxide. Motion from Force.
I'll second.
Second from Gelhar. All those in favor of the sole source of magnesium hydroxide signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say no. And that passes. Up next is item 7, discussion and possible action approving the purchase of a UTV and golf cart with funds received from the sale of 3 general fixed assets sold at Integrity Auction. This is item 7, and there's a letter from Mr. Brooks, and then a quote from Bill's Service Center. Ben, you want to give them a little explanation of what you'll be able to do with these?
Sure, definitely. The UTV and the golf carts would enable staff to travel over the top of the tunnels because of the weight restrictions. Right now, we aren't able to drive like a full-size pickup truck on there with the fear that the roof would collapse in on the tunnels, so we have been staying off of them. They have to use right now to transport fire hoses, pumps, tools, and that they have to drag them out there. This will allow them to travel throughout the plant. They'll have boxes on the golf cart or the UTV, and it just make things, more vehicles readily accessible for them to use. So,
Questions for Mr. Brooks?
golf cart would be the same thing. We're in the process of determining what would be the best fit right now for that. We're just looking into them. That's why I put a not to exceed on the memo. But I had requested info from Bills because they offered the cooperative pricing, the sole source, or the cooperative pricing, like a Sourcewell and that. So if you'd like me to check into Polaris, I definitely can. There are no Can-Am dealerships in Wausau currently for the UTV. That would be local. Yeah. Brad Wentland is working on that currently, getting some pricing together. So,
Yeah, that was my question too, is if it's normal process to get more than one quote.
from my understanding, if you have source-whole pricing or cooperative pricing, one quote is only needed. Therefore, I provided the one quote on this.
Yeah, so our procurement policy allows for, if we're doing pricing through cooperative purchase, that we're allowed to do that. If the commission would like something different, we're certainly open to that.
Definitely.
It's good to know that these quotes are effective.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
I can do that.
All right, what's the timeline on doing this? Do we want to approve this contingently, or do we want to bring this back? What's your pleasure?
You okay with bringing it back in October, Ben? With some other
Absolutely.
costs? Yeah,
Then we'll have the golf cart information as well.
yep,
Okay,
we'll bring it back.
thank you. All right, up next then is item 8, discussion and possible action approving and setting the PFAS target levels and GAC replacement schedule. So this was brought up last month and had some lively discussion. I guess, we're shooting at a little bit of a moving target, but we have those targets listed. The 70, the 20, and the 4 parts is where we see it potentially going. And some of this stuff is not only a moving target, but we're still gathering data. And Scott's trying to analyze, how stuff loads up, and once it's loaded, how much time we have to be able to replace it. So Scott, if you want to summarize your recommendation here.
Sure. I know we had some discussion last month, and Ms. Watson wanted some time to review these items, but yeah, so there's different recommendations from different entities that may either make suggestions or set standards for PFAS levels. So in the box on the sheet, there's what is either recommended or going into be enforceable in future dates. So EPA is looking at 4 parts per trillion for both PFOA and PFAS, but they won't make that enforceable until 2031. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources right now, their standard is set at 70 parts per trillion, which they will move when EPA brings their standards into place. Wisconsin Department of Health Services, right now, DNR is enforcing the 20 parts per trillion combined levels, but this spring, Wisconsin DHS had revised their advisory level to 4 parts per trillion to just kind of shadow what EPA is recommending. I don't know when DNR will start requiring public notification for the 4 parts per trillion. They're still requiring it for the 20 parts per trillion as of now, if that makes sense. It doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah. Right. Right.
We should do it when we need to do it.
Microphone on?
Go ahead. Yeah, if you have a question, Ms. Hadley.
I I don't have a question. I don't know why we continue to do this if nobody has really made a decision. And we don't have to make this decision. And we have a standard.
Well, we do have the GAC filter in place, so there is a overtime loading and contamination of it that we eventually have to change out.
Right, but we have
So
some-
what is that frequency? You know, we should internally, we have the capacity to get to under 4. The reason it's not enforceable, because other people will probably likely not have capacity for some time. We have it. So the question is, you know, I think we would probably agree that 70's not where we want to push it to. But
Yeah, I mean, under state standards currently, we wouldn't have to treat the water at all. We have combined between 30 and 40 parts per trillion from each of our wells in the groundwater. We do have the system, and we are going to be meeting standards in the future. This would allow us some time to get in line with those, do some, I don't want to use the word experimentation, but it will allow us to gather data to know when we will be required to meet that 4 parts per trillion, that we have it correct. We can meet the timing. We can most economically run our system. We can stage our changeouts and our reactivations to meet that timeline and stay under regulatory or in compliance and run it most cost effective.
Mr. Force.
Again, a couple of observations here. Scott, the 4 parts per trillion from EPA, is that the current EPA or is that the previous EPA under the previous administration?
It was proposed under the past administration. Current administration plans to keep it. They just moved the compliance date out because they didn't figure anybody could meet it by 2026. I shouldn't say anybody, but most facilities won't.
Are you sure of that, or do you think this EPA is going to change or postpone that requirement?
They're stating that they're going to adjust. What they're looking at adjusting is the health index number of 1. There's about 10 other, and I might be exaggerating this a little bit. There's another rule that they had a combined number that created a health index. They're looking at those toxins and maybe reworking that, but they plan on moving forward with the 4 parts per trillion for PFOA and PFAS.
Okay. Second observation, before we put in the GAC units, back 2 years ago, when we discovered the PFAS issue, maybe 3 years ago, and we had considerable public concern about the quality of the drinking water. In fact, the city council authorized purchasing bottled water and filters and doing a lot of remediation. My impression was the Wausau public wanted a better quality water. Weren't we in the 20 to 30 range when that was going on with our conventional system before we put in a carbon system?
And at the old plant, when this first became a concern, we were between 30 and 40 parts per trillion. When we moved to our new facility, our ion exchange process would lower it below 20. So that's where we said we were going to stay under the 20 parts per trillion. That, I think this commission vowed to do that at that time. What happens with our ion exchange resin, though, it's not designed for PFAS removal. Right. So it will load up and then it actually sloughs off. So after 9 months, a year, it got to the point
You're right,
where
that was a very temporary solution.
Yeah, we exceeded that 20 parts. We got into the 22 range, and then we worked on getting that resin replaced. So we did replace that resin in hopes that the GAC system would alleviate that issue. We wouldn't have to replace our resin anymore. The life on that resin for TOC removal is 15 to 20 years. We didn't want to replace it every year just for
I'm
PFAS
familiar with that,
removal.
and I think the commission is. My feeling as a commissioner is that this community likes where we are on PFAS. And I think it should be our policy to stay at 4 or below, irrespective of what the EPA or what the DNR is going to do. I think the community has told us they want as much as possible, a PFAS-free drinking water product in this city. And that's where we are.
That's where we are.
That's where we are, and I think what Scott's trying to hone in on here is what's the trigger point. He also wants to have a little latitude to be able to, maybe, you use the term experiment, but I think we could be trying potentially other resins. We have opportunity to maybe regenerate some of these. So that would give us some time before the 4 comes into play that we can understand that data. But right now, he doesn't have guidance. And another thing that's going to come into play is what time of year this happens. We don't want to be doing this in February. So he needs a little bit of latitude to be able to do that. And what's that trigger point? I see Mr. Robinson's in the audience. Did you have something to add to that, Mr. Robinson?
I do, and thank you for that opportunity. The standards aren't changing, and the EPA isn't changing the standard. The 4 parts per trillion has been embedded for PFOA and PFAS. And what they've done is delayed the effective date for parties that are in noncompliance. So there's been no standard change for those 2 contaminants. Remember that these are forever chemicals, and there's 12,000+ of them out there. So the 2 that are present in the Wausau system that we're concerned again are the PFOA and the PFAS. And that's at 4 parts per trillion. The EPA walked back the proposed regulations for many of the other ones. There were 6, I think, that were in there. I know the Department of Natural Resources is working on their groundwater standard, but they're trying, the drinking water standard tends to be tied into the federal standard, and with the delay, I'm not sure how that is there. But I would encourage you to give some thought to changing it. We have a lead lag system of vessels at the water treatment plant, which means water goes in one vessel and then it goes to the second one. One is basically removing most of the PFAS, and then it goes into the other one, and when it comes out, it's basically non-detect. And by doing that, when the lead becomes too saturated with PFAS, that they're getting too high of a level of breakthrough, you go to the lag system, you move that as a lead, and then you look at changing the media, the content that is there. There's been some discussion about trying to regenerate carbon. The DNR is not currently doing that. They are looking at that. One of the quirks in that is that they would want the carbon that was generated from Wausau to go to a regeneration facility and come back, and people are pushing for a change in those rules. And by way of background, I am a member of the DNR's External Advisory Group on PFAS. I chair their cost work group, and we're looking at a number of different ways of trying to control the costs, and we're having regular discussions with the department, and we've had some discussions recently with the management of the department, and they're expressing a willingness to look at different approaches, particularly as it relates to the regeneration of it. But I would encourage you not to change the standard. I think we're meeting the standard. If you change the standard, you start having breakthrough, that will eventually potentially get into your effluent or your influent into the wastewater treatment plant, and then you have the issue of where's that effluent, what's the level going to be, what are the surface water standards in the Wisconsin River, and probably as more importantly, what level of PFAS are in the biosolids that are land spread. And there's a lot of concern in rural Marathon County about accepting biosolids with PFAS in it, given what's taken place in Maine and some of the other states around the country that have had PFAS uptake in cows and crops. And I think you've got a standard. You should stick with it. You can deal with it with the lead lag system that's currently in place. It's good to be ahead of the curve. And I commend the utility staff for the work that they've done to get us there, but I would step back from that.
Thank you. So as it's written, it's not clear on the agenda item. The recommendation from Scott would be to operate the system to just more than 4 parts per trillion prior to new standards being put in place. This would allow flexibility to collect the information necessary to make accurate predictions without having any regulatory exceedances. Operating in this range will provide the ability to get the most useful life out of the carbon, allowing for cost-effective GAC change-outs in the future. So it gives a little flexibility and discretion to our water supervisor to make these change-outs in a timely manner and collect as much data as possible. Because what might happen on the next one, as we discussed earlier, we had potentially less water, grass watering this year. I mean, we may find ourselves in an accelerated change-out next year versus this year. So the more data Scott can collect during this process, I think the better. And giving him a little bit of flexibility there, I think would be helpful. If that made any sense. I know it's generally confusing, but we do have the system in place, so we should be operating it as effectively as we can. And part of that calculation is the fact that it's about $1 million per change out. So we don't want to be changing it out 3 times a year if we can get by with 1 time a year. So I would entertain a motion to accept Scott's recommendation, to accept Mr. Bohr's recommendation, or if we have a modification of that.
I will make that motion.
Motion from
As presented.
Hadley,
I'll second that.
second from Gelhar. Are you comfortable with the way that's worded, Mr. Boers?
Just more
Okay.
than 4 parts per trillion?
Correct.
The recommendation is operate the system to just more than 4 parts. Well, some people would question what that is. Is
So-
5 just more than 4?
So when we're testing, you can explain the test frequency. When it hits that 4, the time it's going to take him to, I'll let you explain it, Scott.
We just want that to be a trigger for our change-outs, Jim. So we want to run it to 4 parts per trillion to see what that timeline would be, and that'll trigger the change-outs. And sometimes the change-outs can't happen immediately. They might be a month or so. And we're testing monthly right now, and without increasing that testing frequency, there may be a lag, or it's a small,
4 doesn't mean 6 or 8.
no, a small period of time in there. And you could word it in, if you want 4 to be the trigger, that would be fine with me. We're just
Long as I
looking for some
understand.
leeway on the timing. We want to run at least a 4 to get to that, to get the information to that number.
There's also some testing accuracy below 4 with which it's not very accurate. So once we get to that 4, we know we're in a more accurate test. So it's not like we can predict it at 3 very accurately, correct?
There are some issues with detection and quantification numbers below before 4 parts. A lot of labs are going before 4 parts, but that's why EPA has set the standards at those numbers, is because that's where they can feel they can maintain accuracies at the 4 parts per trillion.
Thank you. Okay, with a motion and a second, if that's clear, all those in favor of accepting that recommendation signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right. Let us know when that happens, Scott. Up next is to entertain a motion to adjourn. Let me just state first, the next meeting for the record is October 7th, 11 a.m. at this location. Motion to adjourn from Ms. Hadley, second from Mr. Forrest. All those in favor signify by saying aye. See you later.